We assume that being wrong is only and always a negative thing. Sometimes, though, it can be a blessing. In this episode, I'd like to discuss that. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. The life of faith, of course, is about, in part, learning positive content about our faith. Who was Jesus? What does the Bible say? What do Christians believe about X, Y, or Z? But in my experience, equally important to teaching positive content is undoing our misunderstandings about faith. Some big examples of that, for example, might be, and we've talked about this before and we'll come back to it again, the misunderstanding of the intersection between faith and science, presuming that there's a conflict there. Misunderstanding, I would say, culturally about what Christianity teaches about our bodies, which I think the assumption is, Christians believe the body is negative or evil. That is not true. Or maybe the assumption that, if you're Christian, you're supposed to be judgmental and judge other people, especially if they aren't Christian, rather than maybe we're called actually to love all people, not even only people we like, but even our enemies. Anyway, I want to bring up today something this is an author I've talked about before, Eugene Peterson. And this particular chapter, which I'm going to lift a few things from, I think does a really good job of undoing something that maybe we believe actively, or maybe we just assume it somewhere in the back of our minds about what is supposed to happen in our life if we're Christian. And he challenges that and ultimately, as you will hear very quickly, reminds us that we're wrong. And being wrong in cases like this can be a very good thing and a very freeing thing. So this book, again, it's called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. It's about what are called the songs or the Psalms of Ascent. That's Psalms 120 through 134. And this particular chapter, which I would commend to you, is about Psalm 121. And here's how he opens this chapter. I'm going to read a slightly longer passage to start and then lift up a few points along the way. This is, again, Eugene Peterson getting to the point of reminding us that we're wrong. The moment we say no to the world and yes to God, all our problems are solved, all our questions answered, all our troubles over. Nothing can disturb the tranquility of the soul at peace with God. Nothing can interfere with the blessed assurance that all is well between me and my Savior. Nothing and no one can upset the enjoyable relationship which has been established by faith in Jesus Christ. We Christians, he goes on, are among that privileged company of persons who don't have accidents, who don't have arguments with our spouses, who aren't misunderstood by our peers, whose children do not disobey us. This is the second paragraph. If any of those things should happen, a crushing doubt, a squall of anger, a desperate loneliness, an accident that puts us in the hospital, an argument that puts us in the doghouse, a rebellion that puts us on the defensive, a misunderstanding that puts us in the wrong, it is a sign that something is wrong with our relationship with God. We have, consciously or unconsciously, retracted our yes to God, and God, impatient with our fickle faith, has gone off to take care of someone more deserving of his attention. And then this very important sentence, or two. Is that what you believe? If it is, I have some incredibly good news for you. You are wrong. And again, I do think somewhere in the back of our head, everything he lists in those first couple paragraphs I just read is, we think if something happens that is bad, if we have doubts, if we have an argument with our spouse, if our children don't obey us, we feel like, I'm not doing this faith thing right. And he wants in this chapter to say, no, you're not understanding it correctly. So let me lift up just a few other points that he brings up in this chapter, which again, I would commend the reading of the whole thing to you. Psalm 121, he writes, is a quiet voice gently and kindly telling us that we are perhaps wrong in the ways we are going about the Christian life, and then very simply showing us the right way. Let's see, what is the right way then? The promise of the psalm, and both Hebrews and Christians have always read it this way, is not that we shall never stub our toes, but instead that no injury, no illness, no accident, no distress will have evil power over us. That is, that it will be able to separate us from God's purposes in us. He says this is really important, I think, to remember. No literature is more realistic and honest in facing the harsh facts of life than the Bible. At no time is there the faintest suggestion that the life of faith exempts us from difficulties. Can I say that again? At no time is there the faintest suggestion that the life of faith exempts us from difficulties. What it promises is preservation from all the evil in them. On every page of the Bible, there is recognition that faith encounters troubles. The only serious mistake we can make when illness comes, when anxiety threatens, when conflict disturbs our relationships with others, is to conclude that God has gotten bored in looking after us and has shifted his attention to a more exciting Christian, or that God has become disgusted with our meandering obedience and decided to let us fend for ourselves for a while. That's the only serious mistake we can make, he says. And then he reminds us in the end that even in the midst of those troubles and difficulties and challenges, which will come, and which don't mean you're a bad person, and which don't mean that God has deserted you. The difference we have as Christians is that each step we walk, every breath or each breath we breathe, we know we are preserved by God. We know we are accompanied by God. We know we are ruled by God. And therefore, no matter what doubts we endure or what accidents we experience, the Lord, and here he's quoting that psalm, will preserve us from evil. He will keep our life. I don't know if that's helpful for you. I find that to be a very helpful reminder, again, of something that I think as Christians in the 21st century we often get wrong. And I hope hearing a few of Peterson's words gives you a little bit of comfort, a little bit of hope, a little bit of peace. I would ask you, are there things that you think that we get wrong as Christians or questions you have about our faith? And as always, I would love to hear what those are so we can talk about them in a future episode. Thanks as always for being with me. Be well, stay in touch, and God bless.